Okay, well, we do have enough to start the meeting, so we'll call it to order. Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, this day, March 12th. Can anybody else, anybody want to do roll call, since our secretary is not available today?
I can do roll call. I'll go based off of the list that I have here in onboard. We'll assume that that's the ground truth. Let me just get something pulled up here. Okay. Sorry? Oh, okay. Alex Hakes. Nope. Justin Vassell, that's me, present. John Eldon.
Here.
Dave Rollo. Jessica Davis. Emma Ferguson. Hannah Gregory. Caitlin Edwards. Dennis Vera. David Maynor.
Here. Yep.
And Nolan Hendon. And I don't have you on the list, but I'll make a note that you're here.
Okay. Did anybody, well, we were all emailed the agenda for today. Are there any adjustments or amendments to the agenda?
Nope.
Agenda will be accepted. Approval of minutes. Did anybody notice anything that needs to be changed or updated for the minutes? No?
Nope.
Minutes are approved.
Do you need a motion and a second?
We don't.
You don't do that? Okay, sorry, I'm learning.
Left that. Moving to public comment. Is anybody that wants to address us?
Yes.
You have 3 minutes?
Okay, 3 minutes.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Ellie Sphere, and I'm here representing my nonprofit Garden Quest. It is an farm to table, actually seed to table, educational nonprofit in town that focuses on trying to educate students about the whole process of urban ag. And we are in, why I'm here today is because I need your support on Section 6 of the local food and agriculture portion of the Climate Change Action Plan, as well as helping to pave the path for this new gardening task force that I have requested to be a part of. And why I'm saying I need your support is that after this came out, I went to Planning and Transportation, very, very excited because I discovered that my nonprofit could help the city with 12 of the different initiatives in the Sustainable Urban Gardening Implementation Plan and 6 of the action or the goals in the Climate Action Plan. And so I went to planning, and they said, we applaud your efforts. We think what you're doing is great. However, there are some barriers in the rules for the zone that you're in. So they said, come to different commissions and see what, how you could help me, and specifically how the support that we need is, and I see it as an opportunity to work on some of these parts of the Climate Change Action Plan, is if you were to look at goal FA3, increase and stabilize the local food market, FA3-A-2 says revise zoning ordinances to remove barriers to urban agriculture. That's something that is a part of this documentation, as well as I'm hoping that you guys can pave the pathway for this new gardening task force so they do not run into barriers, or the people who they're asking to take on some of these initiatives do not run into barriers because, for example, strategies within this plan, they've there was a task force that came up with the top 15 priorities, and one was adjust city guidelines that incentivize urban homesteads. So I need to go in front of BZA so that to ask for a variance to try to support a lot of these climate change action initiatives on an educational platform.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Great.
So that's my 3 minutes. That's
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That's a good idea. We
What-
can find out from zoning what the process would be.
Yeah.
How we can.
Yeah. I mean, I think first question is what can we do? You know, totally honestly. Like,
I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah.
Makes a lot of
we
sense.
can contact zoning to see how,
what are the current restrictions on urban ag or gardening, or like, is it
sorry.
size related? Is it, you mentioned chickens, we talked about that at one point.
So the nonprofit runs on a certified USDA farm, urban ag certified farm. We've gone through all the city requirements, soil testing.
Mhm.
We can grow food. However, the disconnect is with the seed to table concept of showing how we start vegetables inside. We have to take them to the table. We have to bring food inside to do it in a safe manner.
So
And
it's a health,
zoning.
food safety sort of thing, or, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, not necessarily that, because Board of Health will advise and make sure that we're following commercial standards. That's not the issue. The issue in the ordinance, the UDO, is that in a residentially zoned area, to get occupational home use, the definition is that anything where you're bringing in people that are not living in your home, it has to be within 4 walls. And so urban ag, gardening, farming, there is a flux of going inside and outside. There are activities, it's not all outside, it's not all inside. And so I am requesting to be able to educate the full entire big picture of how you take a seed and you get it to the table. That's
Okay.
all I'm asking
All right, so
for.
we'll go to the zoning board and see what the process is for that.
Mhm.
And then we'll get clarification from you, what you would need in order to make that happen.
Mhm. And then if I can do that, I can then help the city work on a lot of these climate change action goals. There's just to give you an idea in here, which is trying to support the climate change action plan, there are supposed to be resource distribution hubs, establish centralized hubs in neighborhoods to educate, to distribute seeds, to do workshops. We're privileged enough to be able to have developed this, and all I want to do
Is
is
to be able to do the
to
thing.
be able to do it. And
To be able
yes.
to do the thing that they want you to do.
right,
But aren't letting you do.
But the UDO says otherwise.
right, and they're saying we can work on this. It's
I mean,
okay.
it could you specify, like, in just a brief description, not now, but in
Yeah.
email, what it is that, like, where the specific sticking point is? So it's because you're not just inside, you're not just outside, you're trying to do both, and they don't like, it seems like a very kind of minute situation. Like, this
Yeah,
isn't.
Which is why she's asking for a
Yeah,
variance.
yeah,
So
no,
you could
totally.
please- So she basically wants the B-Cause to say, we support
Yeah.
you in this variance.
I just want to be able to say
Okay.
for exactly this. It's,
These are good questions. We gotta, please discussing, but we gotta make time
Move
for
on,
for
yes.
everybody else.
So
Thank you very
that's
much.
why we have
Yeah.
the discussion later on.
okay.
Right,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yep, sure.
Oh, could you spell your name for me, please?
ELLEE and then SPIER.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment? No? That's it? All right. We'll move on. Report from acting chair, that is me. I think since we don't have a quorum for voting,
You do.
not for voting. If it's by the available, the voting for something, we have to do by the quorum of the full
So you have separate,
commission.
bylaws for voting versus calling a meeting.
versus having a meeting. So we
Okay.
could have a meeting without voting.
Okay, thanks.
Because we're not holding elections even though we
This is
need
so
to.
different than any
So-
schools that I've ever witnessed, so.
Well, we had to adjust them because we ran into this issue last year.
Yeah, and
So we had to-
you're your own, you're
we couldn't
governing
have-
yourselves, it's great.
The problem was
I
that if
just
we didn't
knew.
have enough members to hold a meeting, we couldn't have enough members to have a vote. So that's what we were running into.
Do we need those vacancies filled before we can have an election? Is that the situation?
No, but if we had 7 people here, I'd be fine.
Okay, yeah, right.
But yeah, yeah.
So we need
We have to have
100%
quorum
of the
of the
75% that
12.
are actually
Yeah.
filled.
Right.
We need more than 4.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it makes sense, yeah.
Right. So that's all I really have. We don't have anything else to do with, without the quorum. So we'll move on to report from staff liaison.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch the order of these real quick. I'll just, do my 2 first, and then we'll have Travis come up and answer any
Cool.
questions that you guys want. So, we were just awarded, the Beat the Heat campaign. I'm sure Shauna's been keeping you guys updated. She applied through Kappa Strategies. It's a NOAA program, and so we can map our urban heat island. It's a federal grant, and she applied and has been working with Dana Habib at IU, and Bloomington was selected to map our urban heat island this summer. Super exciting, and it's going to require a lot of volunteers. I believe, if I remember correctly, people ride around on like bikes and stuff like that with certain monitors on the bikes to like track heat across the city. So it's going to be a heavy lift on the volunteer side of things. So if you're interested, get in touch with Sean, and if you know anybody else that would be interested, feel free to get in touch with Sean again.
Is this for the bike mapping?
Yeah,
And Sean, well.
she's not
Do
actually.
we
on the
know when
meeting.
this is starting? there's, like,
No,
definitive-
she'll have more information in the coming weeks. We just found out on like Friday afternoon.
Cool.
So,
Congratulations.
There's gotta be bike clubs around here, right, that ride all
Oh,
around
yeah.
there's
town?
gotta be,
There's a
yeah.
lot of bikers around here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that would be a good place to start. Yeah, so heads up on that, and then
Huh?
Earth Day, yep.
Go ahead.
Earth Day, we sent out the press release last week, so we're officially accepting signups for any vendors for the event. It's gonna be the same as last year. This is the 2nd annual Bike to Earth Day. We are collaborating with Parks this year, so they're doing a volunteer recognition ceremony. The Environmental Commission is doing their Eco Heroes Award winner recognition. Also, at the event, we're doing the EV ride and drive like we did last year, and then same thing, just music, food. Upland will be there. So all good things. If you know any organizations that are interested in signing up to table, that is online on the Earth Day website, and they can do that. Otherwise, you should plan to attend. It's April 20th from 1 to 5 at Switchyard Pavilion. And since it's Bike to Earth Day, we are promoting that people actually bike to the event as opposed to driving their vehicles. That's all on our end, and then we have Travis joining us. Yeah.
Well, how big and how long is the Beat the Heat grant? Is it like a one summer or multiple summers, do you know?
I believe it's just one summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll preface Travis's
Yeah.
presentation too. It's Jane Cooper-Smith, the Director of Economic and Sustainable Development. Thanks for letting me be here and awkwardly backseat drive and try to backseat drive the whole time. It's really weird. But I invited Travis, you can go up to the table. I invited Travis from Bensel, who's with Sullivan Development, to speak to the commission today because it came up during the last meeting that there were some questions about the proposed Summit development, which would go on Bloomington's southwest side. It would be a significant addition to the amount of available housing stock to Bloomington. And Travis has been working with the city planning department for 1.5 years. And so on the development of a PUD, a planned unit development.
That's what I'm not.
And I wanted him to have the chance to talk to you guys directly and maybe answer any questions. He can speak to environmental and some sustainability questions that you might have. Is that a?
Yep, that's great.
Do you have? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. I did go back and watch last month's meeting, so I think I'd like to just preference from, it's been an 18-month process with planning, which we have gone through lots and lots of iterations of how this PUD will look. And if you looked at the very first proposal to where we are now, there's been a lot of changes. Most of those reflect us adopting the current UDO standards and not setting specific standards. And that's for two reasons. One is because that's what the staff would prefer, but two, in a PUD, if we adopt standards, some of which we propose were more stringent or more sustainable or more environmental friendly than the current UDO, we are then locked into those. So, for instance, if we increased our number of electrical charging car stations requirement, that's great, but now we're locked in. If the city ups theirs to more than what we've got in ours, we're locked into ours because we're a PUD. If we adopt the city standard, then we can always exceed that if we want to. And if the city ups their standards, we have to abide by the additional. So those are the kind of things that in one way we would love to have it codified and know what it is, but on the other hand, if we exceed the standard today and the city ups it, we can continue to up those standards.
I wonder, are you all familiar with PUDs, with planned unit developments? It's a planning term, so the way development works, whatever you're trying to build within city limits, and this kind of gets at Ellie's question too, the planning department governs the built environment. And the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance, which went through an enormous update in 2020, is the document that governs how we build things and what we can build where. And it also includes housing affordability and sustainability metrics and incentives. If a developer, and in this case it's Summit, is taking on a project that they don't feel can fit within the UDO, then they have the ability to apply for a PUD, a planned unit development. The city, the planning department, says, okay, we'll consider this, but you have to meet some additional incentives if you want us to consider this planned unit development. So that's why Travis is kind of getting into the UDO versus the PUD. So the PUD kind of has its own set of rules, and they're never less restrictive than the UDO, but they might be different.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
who pays for the margins between it? So if there's an obligation to meet the city standards, where does that money come from?
As a developer, yeah, we have to meet those standards.
Perpetuity?
Yeah,
Or-
because we essentially in a PUD, we write our own zoning. Okay, so let's say we simply wanted a site and we said, the current zoning doesn't allow for us to do X, or we want different setbacks. So you could get a variance, that's one way to do it. The other would be to say, we just want to do a PUD. And in that PUD, we want to say the setbacks can be something different. The city says, okay, you can write your own zoning ordinance and set those different standards, but to do so, you have to be at least 5 acres. You have to have 15% affordable of your project. You've got to meet these other standards in order to do that. This is 138 acres, so we are writing those different ordinances, those different requirements. They're all based on existing parts of the UDO, so in some places we write what those different standards are. In other places, we just say, to this piece of the 138 acres, we're applying this zone, and to this piece, we're applying that zone. But we're doing it consistently over the 138 acres. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
So when we do that, though, we've now written an ordinance that is not allowed to be varied from. So if you write something in there and it's specific, you can't come back later to the BZA and say, oh,
It's like a contract
I want
with the
to,
city.
yeah,
basically.
yeah, we want to change that. If we say in this, of the 138 acres, we're going to default to the UDO on environmental standards, then we default to the UDO, and we could ask for a variance if we wanted to, but also if the city changes those environmental standards, we have to abide by the changes in perpetuity.
Let me ask you, I know one question that was raised last time was the justification for the number of units. Where did that come from?
Justification for the number of units?
Yeah.
There is no codifying number of units in our PUD or in the UDO.
So there was something
Bloomington
like
abandoned.
450
Huh?
I thought it was 450.
It's about
Family
4,200 units
Okay.
potentially could be built there, but that is not codified in either document. Bloomington decided when I was on the Plan Commission 20 years ago that we were not gonna have unit specifications. So we have design standards that tell you how big a building is, how much green space you need, but we don't say whether that building is 1 unit or 10 units. We used to do that. We used to say this piece of ground is 5 units, this one's 17 an acre. We went away from that, and we just said these are the design standards. The problem with that from a development standpoint is somebody says, well, I want to know how many car trips it's going to be. I want to know how many people are going to live there. I want to know the environmental impact. So we have to then say, okay, if we build a building like this and we put 2-bedroom units in it, this is that total number of units. If they're 3-bedroom units, that number of units is going to go down. If they're 1-bedroom units, that number of units is going to go up. So 4,200 units is the number we've decided with planning staff that we're going to use for the analysis of what's the impact on the sewer system, what's the impact on traffic, what's the impact on those other.
But you're not locked into building 4,200 units?
Correct, we're not.
But that's
You
what
have
you're using to assess the impact
and
on
the impact on that. Yes.
community.
Yeah.
What about city services such as like trash and recycling and?
We following the city code on all of those.
No, I mean, how's the impact being measured?
Based on those number of units.
Okay, so are they gonna be, they're all gonna get city services, or are they gonna be HOAs, or are they gonna be?
Well, there will be HOAs, but they will have city services if we meet the city standard, which means if it's an apartment building, the city will not pick up trash. If it's individual unit townhomes, they'll pick up trash. We are required to have alleys, but the city will not go down alleys or pick up trash in the alleys.
Okay.
You know, we're following all the codes with regards to tree preservation, sinkholes, streams, those kind of environmental issues. We're following the code. But the city is requiring us to put in some roads. Those will take out some trees. I mean, so it's a trade-off process.
Where are things at with the development? So still going back and forth to the city?
No,
what it look like, or
we have,
broken ground, or?
no. So we will have a plan commission meeting next Tuesday. I haven't been on the website. Do you know if the staff report is up? The most recent ordinance is up, as well as the staff report should be up sometime today. We will go to plan commission with a positive recommendation to plan commission, then we go to city council for 2 hearings. City council has 90 days from the plan commission meeting to act upon our proposal, or the recommendation of plan commission goes into effect. So we don't know what that recommendation is, but whichever it is, puts a 90-day clock on city council.
I'm not seeing the
Back it up.
staff recommendation up, but what Travis is talking about is that, so he's been through this 18-month process with staff. They come to agreement, well, they don't come to agreement, but basically the developer has to meet the terms that staff says you have to do X, Y, and Z for us to positively recommend this to council. So that just means that the developers met those terms, staff is making a favorable recommendation, and the documents indicating that with all the details will be posted on the website supposedly today, but they're not there yet.
In any of those, was there any consideration of the impact on the local homeless community that's been in some of the areas that I know are planned for development?
So there are no homeless individuals living on this parcel. There are some on the adjacent parcel owned by the county, but there are none living on this parcel as of Friday when I was last out there. So they're they're 150 feet south of the property line, but there's none on the property that I can find.
Well, I mean, then they're gonna be displaced during construction or anything like that. Is there any
There are
other?
none on our property that's to be displaced. Like I said, there is an encampment on the county's property adjacent to our property.
Cause I know I've seen them in the parcel over by, help me out, the medical
Catalan.
Thank you, Kevin.
So the parcel
And then, and that's the county's parcel.
immediately by Catalan is the counties, and then this is kind of west and south of that, even a little bit.
So that deal, that's not part of this?
Correct, that
development?
is not part of
Okay.
this, yeah.
Okay.
But the city, the city's overall strategy on homelessness or supporting the unhoused population is to get them housed, and that we are working to create housing in order to do that. So the city, in partnership with the Heading Home, which is with United Way of South Central Indiana, is that our affiliation now, or is it Monroe County? It's South Central Indiana.
I think so.
So United Way sponsors Heading Home, and Heading Home initiative is, takes a built for zero approach, and it's a long game, but the gist of it is that we're working for everyone to be housed in this community and to have the resources that they need.
So what part of the strategy is this? Is this, with 15% being affordable housing, is this to get people that are in low-income housing now into more affordable housing, and then that low-income housing gets allocated?
So we believe our strategy is
What's it?
how we help with the community strategy is one, we provide a broad range of housing types so that everybody is able to move up into housing and provide options, because we know there are individuals that are in housing that they could afford more, but they can't find that. So if they're able to move through the process. The other piece is we've widened the availability of housing options that we can include. So we've taken housing options that in the traditional zones are only in one zoning district and allowed them over almost all of our zoning districts. We've also decreased the minimum lot size, the minimum frontage, to allow for more affordable and more dense housing. So we believe that widens the base of housing options, and along with the housing for all solution, we're helping add to all of that, not adding just for a specific.
Well, so that was the question, is where's the projection for growth that stimulated this?
So the regional housing study that was completed in 2019 and again updated this year shows that Monroe County needs about just under 8,000 residential units over the next 10 years. We believe
Permanent residents or?
permanent residence housing. We believe this project's about a 12 to 15 year build out. So we're within that. It's about 4,000 units that it needs within the city of Bloomington. And that is based on, one, growth, two, the need for housing, and also the number of individuals that currently would like to live in Bloomington, which is about 7,000, but can't live in Bloomington and commute into Bloomington on a daily basis to work.
And that can't is because of
Housing
costs?
cost and availability.
Okay.
Yeah, so here is a site that's within that, within the realm of public transportation, which in the realm of what's already being served by utilities, that we can develop out and provide that.
So that's gonna be the availability, but what about the cost? Because Bloomington's known as one of the higher cost places to live, specifically housing, so how are you gonna
So
combat that?
part of the way we can combat that is by more dense development, because that allows us to spread that infrastructure cost, the land cost, across more units, which helps bring down those units. And then we have incentives in our PUD that are the incentives that are in the UDO, but we've got them bumped up so that if you use more affordability and more environmental or sustainable incentives, you can build more density. So again, trying to allow us to use all those tools in the toolbox, not requiring them to be, but making them available as projects come along. The project is already a Duke certified electric community, which means Duke will help us in developing each individual house, as well as developers put in incentives programs. We currently plan to not bring gas into the site. We don't feel that there's a need for that. That's not excluded in the UDO because of some problems with just trying to dictate as a city that you're not going to have gas available. It's much easier for us to do that as a developer, not as a city by ordinance. So we're looking at those kind of options. We currently have about 38 acres or about 38%, which is about 40 some acres of the site that is going to be in some type of open space or preservation area.
How many acres was that?
For the notes.
It's 38%. I don't
Okay.
remember the exact acreage. I wanna say 42 or something like that. 38% of 130.
What are those gonna be? I mean, keeping some woodlots or a bunch of grassy parks or? Is that
It's, some
something
of it's
you're
open
doing?
space, some of it's open space, some of it is tree preservation, some of it's sinkhole preservation. There is some floodway on the site, there is a stream, and while it's, today we could all walk across it and not get our feet wet, it's still a stream, and so that's a protected area. And then we've adopted all the UDO standards for what can take place in those open spaces. But unlike most zoning districts, they would say if you have a lot, so much of it has to be open space, and that gets to be planned by each individual developer. We're going to set aside open space in our zoning district. So while each lot will have to have some open space, we're also setting aside a big chunk up front of open space.
Is that because it's not buildable? Is that because it's protected anyway? What's your motive? That sounds good. I like that. You know,
Our
everybody-
motivation is different fold. One is because some of it's required to be. Two is because how we envision this development being is to preserve
some
those areas
parks
and having some open space and some green space. Some of it's because we need some space for water detention or other things to have. And instead of waiting until a parcel comes in, you say, how are you solving the problem? We're solving the problem up front as a plan unit. And that's one of the advantages of a PUD, to be able to set that stuff up front.
Well, I know that aside from rent itself, the electric bill is typically everybody's highest cost utility. Are there any green initiatives for,
So there are
electricity
green initiatives
offset?
in our ordinance, as well as the ordinance, the parts of the UDO that say, okay, you can do this thing and you get advantages. But every single residential structure will have to adopt some type of environmental incentive program. Be that, I mean, it could be as simple as just an Energy Star home, which in itself, most people do anyway, but it's not required, but it is required in this. LEED certification, there's like 5 different certifications. The PUD does not require you get a certification, doesn't mean you get the plaque on the wall, but you do have to build to that standard. Every house has to have the ability to have the infrastructure for electric charging stations and solar.
Okay.
It's really hard to,
So you're building them to plug and play?
well, the ability to add that. Because again, it's really hard for an individual home to say, you've got to put in a plug, or you've got to put solar.
Yeah.
But you can say, you have to build to a standard
Get the
to
cables
which
underneath big enough
it's
that-
easy to do that.
no, but is that gonna be accepted by all the HOAs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anybody that.
It's in the zoning. That can be enforced by across the hall.
So-
Unlike currently, it's enforced by neighbor suing neighbor if a homeowner takes it up.
Okay, so they could install solar at their own cost, I'm assuming. To support them, and then because of the density, there's not gonna be an issue with, like, if there's only one roof and there's several people living under it,
Yeah.
are the people that install the solar going to be
It would be-
supporting the rest of the
It would be
people?
attached to their specific meter, so they would be getting the credit.
If it's an apartment building, it would
But they'd be
be,
taking up the space that the other person would need to do it themselves as well.
Right, then the same, when it comes to solar, it's the grid, however much the grid can handle, that specific portion of the grid
Mm.
that it's back feeding into, so there are plenty of neighborhoods where 40% of the neighbors already have solar, and you literally are not allowed, the utility company will not allow you to install solar unless you pay to upgrade the grid yourself. It's actually in the interconnection paperwork.
but with us being a
So
Duke
first come,
neighborhood,
first served, first
with
served.
us being a Duke neighborhood, that kind of stuff is
Fast-
supposedly.
fast-tracked.
Is in the process, so they're advising us how to do that because they know this incentive. As opposed to non-Duke neighborhoods, they're built and then it's sort of like, okay, now we want to add on at the end and the infrastructure.
So they're gonna make the infrastructure more able to have the ability to take on more solar than it would if they weren't doing it this way, correct?
Yeah, and they'll advise us through that process. That's,
Can you tell us where the UDO specifications and the staff agreements are? I mean, I know you said that they'll be listed.
Staff can send that around
Yeah.
if you want. You want like access to the UDO and then
Yeah.
the staff memo.
See what's
about
being
this.
proposed, what's
Yeah.
being countered.
Are there any other standards, like are you guys putting in heat pumps for every house? Because it's
We're
more
not
efficient?
down, we don't go to that specifics in the standard, because that gets really hard for across the hall.
Okay.
Because what we're doing is we're writing the zoning ordinances enforced by the city. When we get to homeowners associations, then we can start getting more specific about, okay, they gotta be heat pumps, they gotta be electric water heaters, those specific things, because those, but it's really hard for across the hall to enforce what's inside the house.
Got it.
I'm sorry, I asked you this before,
No,
but I don't know. You said that you got 8,000, predicted 8,000 people that want to move in from outside, creating this demand. But where was the study for that?
ROI, the Regional Opportunities Group that is under the auspice of the Community Foundation,
Okay.
conducts that study, and it's available on their website.
And you said it was in 2019 and
2000.
I can
20
send you a link to that too.
23.
Have they publicly released
Yes,
the update?
it is now.
Okay, I'll send.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there a plan floating around publicly, or are you still in the kind of the back?
No,
phase?
So typically, staff doesn't post the complete ordinance of a PUD, but they are in this case, and they told me they were gonna try to post it today. So I don't know, I mean,
It's not up
Jane's
there.
saying it's not up there yet, but it's supposed to be out in advance of our meeting at Plan Commission next Tuesday. So what other questions do you have about?
When it comes to sustainability, there's currently a pilot going on with multiple different apartment complexes where they built a compost center essentially, and there's been trainings for the residents. Is there anything, maybe that's too much in the weeds for now,
Correct.
but with the amount of green space, is there any ideas like of that floating around? Because like I'm big into taking care of organic waste, keeping in the neighborhood, turning it into soil.
Did you see the NPR segment this morning? Listen to the NPR segment about Cape Cod.
No.
There's an interesting NPR segment this morning about Cape Cod and dual sewer systems that collect liquids.
Stormwater one or?
No, liquids and solids
Huh.
to reuse the liquids.
Okay.
So it's an interesting, it was on NPR this morning.
Because doesn't Australia have really robust like gray water systems where you
Yeah.
can reuse gray water in your house?
Yeah, it's a interesting thing, so.
Because gray water systems aren't allowed in Bloomington,
Yeah.
are they? Because we tried to do one at the yeah.
And
So-
the water department told us that he didn't understand why we were still using potable water for, do you remember that?
I don't.
He said that he didn't understand why we're still using potable water for sewage.
Oh,
Toilets and
right.
everything, yeah. So the list of sustainable things you need to meet, when you drill into those programs, composting and those things are there. So when an apartment building comes in and they gotta pick one of those standards, they might pick a standard that is just LEED, or they might pick one of these other standards that has these other ways of meeting that same
Right.
criteria. Because again, we're trying to make it as broad as we can from that perspective.
Those apartment complexes are typically pretty lazy, which is why very few of them actually do any
Do anything,
recycling.
yeah.
And, yeah.
But it's gonna be interesting because I think, the population that is potentially living down, this is not a student-focused
Right.
development, and so it will hopefully be.
Well, that's
yeah.
what I think the concern is, that if there isn't a priority or something given to the people that want the housing, then the university students are just gonna take advantage of it and fill those spots in.
So
You know what
you're
I'm
saying that unless we're protecting it for non-student populations,
I
then
can-
we're gonna be at risk?
I can totally see it, just, the university gets more students, the students,
So-
they're not paying for
But
their
they're
house.
not
I've
anticipated
said
to get
this
more
several
students.
times, and when I was on Plan Commission, I used to teach the class, students are not a protected class. If we as a community want to make a stand on that, that is perfectly legal to do. You just have to do it fairly to everyone, which means the single mom that decides to go back to school and falls into the category as a student, if we decide to draw the line and say students are not allowed here, then that individual is not allowed. But they are not in, by themselves, protected class. So that's, I think, a bigger city discussion, not a specific this property discussion. That's a discussion that if that's our concern, we can address it. We just have to address it fairly across all the protected classes.
And I think what you were trying to say is sort of, I worded it in the clunky way, I'm the one that did that, but I think you were sort of talking about the people who need housing and don't have access to it right now because of cost and availability.
The 8,000 people that were mentioned in the
Yeah.
study, we
Right.
want to make sure that the people that, those people are the ones being,
Yeah. For what it's worth, IU is like talking about demographic cliff and declining enrollments and can't build anything ever anywhere. Very different. It's interesting to see this moving forward when IU is just like shutting everything down. I don't know if that's actually the case.
We just don't believe that's the market. That's not what we believe is the market here.
Crane cattle land. I mean, there's
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and the city's pushing hard to make it a tech hub as well. We need a lot more housing in order to do that.
yeah, I think, I mean, it's very interesting. I think we, as a commission, would like to, one, figure out exactly what the standards are that need to be met.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we've really visited them, but basically give our input
Mhm.
on what those are and review what's being proposed, what staff's countering with. Yeah, I think that.
And like I said,
Appreciate
we
you.
still have a 90-day window, even if there's a recommendation on Tuesday, there's still a 90-day window to
Yeah.
get feedback. And
So I think we should actually make this a note to bring up next time, after we've had some time to review.
Yep.
Thank you for.
Yep, thank you.
Can I
Thank
just
you.
point out one other thing that, you mentioned the traffic study, but I don't, again, the group, I don't know if they're familiar with it, the developer is tasked with engaging in a traffic study to determine what the needs are and what the burden will be on the roads over time, so that the correct, amount of infrastructure is built for the development. So that's happened. It
That's
is-
between second and third, and those are already,
It's between, well,
It's
Bloomfield
between,
and
it's between,
Taft.
yeah, Bloomfield Road or
And
Second
Taft.
Street and Taft
and
Road.
tap, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it
And
includes,
those are already pretty busy.
correct, but it actually includes a connection between the two,
Right.
which isn't there, which will actually help relieve some of the issue that's there.
Do you guys
Do
see
these have-
needing to increase, like make those 4 lanes instead of 2 lanes?
No,
things
so-
like that?
In an overly simplification, there are some intersections that currently do not operate at the best standard. They don't fail, but they're not at the best
Is
standard.
that, are we talking about the technology with the lights that?
Yeah, well, they
the
fail
city
for,
needs to
they
update
fail
all
for
of
different,
them
yeah,
to one
they fail for
standard
different
already?
reasons. They might fail because they don't have a turn lane. They might fail because there's a timing issue.
Okay.
They might fail because there's a timing issue between the one at Landmark and the one
Mhm.
at Twin Lakes, but
Yep.
it's not a matter of, there's not enough road. So what the traffic study says, in a nutshell, is the intersection of Weimer and Second Street is an issue today, and it will get better for a while, and then it will be an issue again. There's a way to solve it. Way to solve it has been already identified as a signal or a roundabout.
Mhm.
That would solve it today, and it would solve it in the future. But it's not a new problem. It's an identified problem today.
Are there any proposals for secure bike locker facilities?
So yes, that's part of the UDO, and we adopted those things. But we are doing, for the transportation plan, bike lanes on 3 of the main roads through the property. So there will be, what's the term? Separate bike lanes, like it's.
Protected bike
Protected
lanes?
bike lanes on the new segment of Adams, as well as a new segment of Sudbury.
Okay, so a lot of the population that you're talking about with like Cook and,
Catalan, yes, yeah.
a lot of them take advantage of that, so.
Yeah,
the
so those things are,
daytime-
those are built into our plan and required, and those are required to come before development takes place.
Okay.
So that infrastructure comes in front. But to come back to the transportation plan and the traffic study, which was, it's gonna end up to be about $70,000 that we spent on the traffic study, identifies 22 intersections, of which there's about 6 or 8 that have issues today and/or issues in the future, none of which is like blow up the whole intersection and change the road to 4 lanes. It's like adjust timing, maybe add a turn lane, put in a roundabout, which is already in the plan to put in a roundabout. So overall, it's not a major, you know, that area's town's gonna come to.
You'd think with 4,200 potential units that would be the case.
But I think that really says that our planning for infrastructure and for this site has been in the works.
Yep.
Adams Street, which is at both ends of this, was designed for more development to come, and it's just not been built.
I just don't wanna turn to Austin, Texas, where they didn't plan well enough and traffic has gone awful
Yeah.
down there
That's the thing, is that the more we make it bike friendly, I mean, the less, the primary times of the day are gonna be, one, the deliveries that during like noon.
Yeah.
When they block off 3 lanes of
Yeah.
traffic. And then morning, and then 5s, but if people are out of the way and using green alternatives anyway,
Yeah.
public transportation, and, yeah. they
And then
should-
we will, our property will connect to the new trail that's being built in the Duke easement, which is starting construction this year, which takes you from our property through the county's property, so just north of RCA Park, all the way over to Wodgers and Switchyard. So that gets you, so this will end up connecting trails to the Clear Creek Trail at TAP and to Switchyard Park at Rogers Street.
Maybe something we should do is, while we're looking for the volunteers to help Sean out with Beat the Heat, we can ask the biking clubs or whoever we can identify to participate in that, what they think of the projected bike lanes, and,
Yeah.
just get their feedback, since we're gonna be regular bikers anyway.
And there's a bicycle commission as well, right?
I believe so.
I think it's Bike and Ped, but
Bike and
yeah.
Ped, yeah, so we might wanna reach out to them too. I don't know if you've talked with them already.
Only from the transportation standpoint.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much. If this is on your agenda next month, I'll be here as well.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right, so we'll move on to reports from commissioners. I don't believe there's any just transition people here left.
Nope. Well, no, it would be, Dennis.
Dennis?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to community outreach.
Okay, so last month I had meant to go to the Environmental Commission again, and I ended up putting the date wrong in my calendar and I missed it. So I'll try to go back and read their minutes and see what they're up to and just catch the next one. But beyond that, I met recently with someone by the name of Amy Roche, who is on the Urban Gardens implementation team, which is, I believe, within ESD. And she was just talking about some of the work that they do on that. I think it was originally called the task force. And there's a couple other task force or implementation teams there as well that might be, looking for some support at some point. They're in the process of, I know there's like a resilience plan that's currently being drafted, and at some point, once that gets released, then we might think about commenting on what's in there, if it's still in a draft form, or if we're happy with it, then advocating for it before the council or for the mayor's office or something. But I basically told her that let us know whatever we could do to help with what they're doing. Urban Gardens is definitely an important piece of sustainability, and definitely matches up with the sustainability plan, the climate action plan, that sort of thing. So yeah, and then she had a lot of good thoughts about individuals and other organizations that would be good to reach out to, and so she's been able to provide me with some of those contacts, which is good. So just giving us threads to follow up on, which is good. And so yeah, I think that's all that I have from community outreach this month.
I think we definitely need to find something regarding recruitment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, brought up my Propel proposal before. But yeah, I think if we don't have the visibility that we into who's coming in,
Mhm.
'cause those positions are still vacant by next month.
You're talking about the seats in this commission?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should probably fast track the student outreach to try and get some of them in here.
Are you talking about the council or the mayoral?
We've got
the available
both.
positions. I know Emma's still on there, but she's not there. She was a mayoral spot available.
And then there's 2 or 3
She's on there somewhere.
council. Yeah, she is.
It seems like there's something going on above us, because I learned I was still on it by reading the website. You did too, but
That's how I found out
on the
on the
website.
Yeah.
So,
That, I apologize, I feel like I'm supposed to be connecting the dots there between ESD and Office of the Mayor a little better than I am.
Yeah, there's
so
2
that could
common
be part of
council,
it.
1 mayoral open currently, but then Emma's should be open, and that's a mayoral.
And does she
And
want
then-
reappointed or no?
No.
She doesn't.
And then
Okay,
Nolan
so there's
Hendon
two
is no
main-
longer the chair of the Monroe County Commissioner, somebody else is, and they were on the website last month. but
No,
then
they
switched
weren't, they
back.
weren't on the website. No, that's fine.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Maybe I'm wrong.
okay,
I found out because of Fred from Monroe.
Okay.
if I could,
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I was gonna raise sort of I guess a point of order about this stuff. You know, because we obviously have some confusion about like what's going on with the official roster. There's some confusion about, you know, if it's accurate or not, or
It changes month to month.
it changes, yeah, and so, you know, there's a question about how we get visibility into that, or how we can provide input if we see something that we think is not right, and so maybe you can help us connect those dots at some point. The sort of point of order I want to bring up related to that here is that looking at the bylaws and the municipal code, all of our ex officio seats are voting members, according to municipal code. And, you know, we've got one person who's technically on the roster, but we know has resigned from the position. And we've got somebody who, you know, is supposed to be on the commission as far as we know, and is not listed there. So, you know, at best, we've got 2 proper vacancies at the moment. We should have 3, but we have, let's say, 2 officially. So that leaves 12 voting members left on the board. We, you know, at best have 4, if we include you, and at worst have 3. So, you know, I don't think we have quorum here. I think, you know, what that means is that, well, we're getting near the end of the hour anyway, so we might think about tabling these discussions until next time. But I think substantively what it would mean for this meeting is that we would have to reapprove the minutes at the next meeting, because that, you know, wouldn't have been an actual vote that we could do, right, without quorum.
So you don't think that there's quorum because
Because-
or one of these positions
We don't know how many
non-voting?
people are supposed to be here.
So basically, we have
Because
minimum of
over the past 2 or
5.
3 months, things have changed. We've seen names
6.
pop up on the website, then they've gone
I thought you had
down.
7 members and then 4 of you are here, so that's how we determined that you could call the meeting to order.
Yeah, so I was
That's
looking.
how, for calling the meeting to order, but for approving official business.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
the vote.
this recording will still be able to go on CATS, and this meeting has still happened. It's just that you can't
Has it?
approve the minutes.
No,
I'm
yeah,
just trying to clarify in case
Yeah.
I need to talk to legal about anything.
Well, no, it's a good question, actually, because I think it comes down to, you know, you can interpret the concept of quorum a couple ways, because we don't actually have it listed out in the bylaws that there's a different, you know, a different block of text for holding votes and a different block of text about quorum for holding meetings.
I think we do have that somewhere, because we
I
actually
can't find
did do that with, when Joe, when he was here, and Matt
Mhm.
Flaherty. Because we were running into the problem where we had open positions, and we didn't have enough people filling. Basically, we had to go off of the 12 available spots, and we couldn't vote on anything because we had these open positions.
Yeah, the open positions are fine because they don't count in the quorum total.
Previously they did, so that's what the change
But
comes
now, so now, it's not like we have a quorum for holding a meeting and a quorum for doing votes, and that those are 2 different definitions. We just have only one definition for quorum. And it's consistent with what's in the municipal code. So we can't do official business today. So it all comes down to what the definition of official business is. Or we're all here having discussions. We obviously can't vote on anything.
That would be the votes, that would be assigning roles.
Yeah.
That
So
technically, I
anything
guess, would
like
be
that.
approval of minutes.
You know, so there's maybe some question about
No, 'cause
can
we
we
never
be
had
here
votes for
discussing
approval of minutes.
at all without quorum, but you know, so maybe this goes down as not an official meeting in the books at some point, but
I think I'll have the notes reflect that there was discussion about approving the minutes, but that it was determined that the minutes could not be approved.
yep.
Okay, I don't think we ever voted on that before. We used to do the first and
I
second.
didn't pass grades this
That was
semester,
it.
we have to cancel this game.
But yeah, no, I think we have to note the meeting that happened, because we had enough people here to hold the meeting, but we don't have the people to vote.
We
That's what
haven't
changed it
decided
for.
anything today, we haven't
No.
voted on anything.
Right,
so
but this
whether
applies-
it's
this will-
happened or not happened,
This will be important when it comes down to, I think in the municipal code, you have to have the meeting every month. And if you
Right.
don't,
I
then it
think
comes
if-
down to, if you miss meetings, then
I-
it questions the
I don't-
viability of your.
We only have a short amount of time left. I'd love to talk about the question, how do we get more people in here? I want to talk to you something about community outreach.
Yeah.
Do we want to go after students? That
Yes.
sounds bad, because I have connections there.
I think
I
one,
can-
2 students would be fantastic. for
Okay.
this.
I can put the word out.
That's the thing.
Write to them directly, I mean.
That's the thing, I've had 3 people that wanted to join, but couldn't, because we had these positions of people that haven't been here.
Yeah,
2
who's
years.
who's Alex Hakes? That person hasn't
Precisely.
been here, we need to get that person kicked off.
Right.
But we can't do that ourselves.
We can recommend to the council that that happens, but only the council can pull them off.
Right.
Right, but we don't know how to do that, so that the
There's somebody-
council
Well,
can
we
tell us
can do
who's.
that, we can communicate with council
Yeah,
and.
bylaws say 3 missed meetings.
Or actually, it's
Can-
3 online.
Can
2
somebody,
minutes.
do you know the
two.
names, Michaelan, or can someone email Michaelan the names and we can
Yeah.
follow up with?
Yeah, because once, I mean, with the open door laws, that's, I mean, that was the one thing that they said is if they miss however many meetings, then they can just be removed.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but, well, actually, it says.
Well, I think
can't-
we have to
can't
vote on
remove
it,
them. We have
and-
to go through this process.
And then
I'm
the
just saying,
council or the
it's
mayor
a
has to
feasible
final
option,
decide.
it's, once that's the
Yeah.
case, that's something that
Right.
can happen.
Yeah, we essentially
Alex
have
got me
You don't have to
five
know all
open
the details
positions
now,
right
we
now.
can just start the process by inquiring with them and they'll know the process exactly
And
and we
I
can
know-
report on it next time.
I know Matt Flaherty was working on, we brought this up several times.
Okay.
I know he was working on it with the commission on the committee, or the committee on the commissions.
Okay.
The council
Um,
processes.
Right, so that we could have visibility and make recommendations to affect
Yeah.
to speed up that process essentially.
Yeah.
And to clear out the people that aren't participating. So yeah, if there's anything you can find out on that, on how we can
Yeah.
become more involved in the process. Because otherwise, we can find the people. I mean, I know, well, 2 have since left. One's still interested, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think for next time, we should try to track down some of these ambiguities on the membership. So I can take the lead on that if you want, and I can work with you at least as a starting point to kind of figure out where to go next.
Yeah, if
Just
you
so
find out
that
how
we get
many
stuff
spots we have
moving
open.
through the pipeline before the next meeting.
I'll start looking for people to fill the spots that we can recommend.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that'd be good. And, you know, we were gonna talk about bylaw amendments at some point. This is something that we might want to,
Yep.
well, I guess what I was gonna say is, you know, we've got 2 ex officio members that very rarely come, right? And they're both voting members
Right.
by definition in the code.
Who's ex officio other than Dave Rollo?
It's IU Sustainability and
Justin Davis.
Monroe County. Mhm.
We are now hiring a new sustainability director who
Right.
replaces Jessica Davis
Okay.
on this council. I think that closes in a week or 2, so.
Okay, maybe that
That'll
won't
be
be
all
so much of a problem, but yeah, that makes it tough like this when we're missing a handful of, we got a handful of vacant
60%.
seats and just a person or 2 is gone for that week, and then we've got, you know, 2 people that just, we're always missing 2, you know.
Yeah.
makes it hard to do business, so. Yeah, nothing we can do in the bylaws, because the code would have to change for that, to be like, say, non-voting members, for example. But we could make the case if we thought it was a good idea. But we'd have to establish a quorum to be able to officially make that case, so.
Well, a quorum of the positions filled, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the amendment we did. All right, anything further on that? We'll move on to waste reduction or waste management.
Justin will talk with you separately about that.
Okay.
Do you have anything to report on waste management?
Yeah,
Yeah.
New things that might be.
Waste management, we're part of the organic waste task force. McKenna was there for her first meeting. I'm going to be asking to the organic waste task force, which is comprised of multiple different individuals, if they're interested in jumping on a pilot program, multiple different pilot programs that the urban farm is doing. One of which would be like the compost captains, but it would involve bokashi. So right now, for example, the urban farm has a $1,700 grant from the state item to hold a training on bokashi. And we could expand that instead of 30 people to 60 people or 90 people if any of these, either the solid waste district or the city or the county wanted to, throw $1,500 in to that. We're already gonna do that to expand it to more, because as we know with Earth Keepers, there were over 1,000 residential customers that they were servicing for food waste. So the organic waste task force is looking at large ideas, but I'm trying to push them to do small pilot programs to start to get their feet wet somewhere, because there is that apartment complex composting pilot program that's going well so far, and I just feel like we need to get something started, because the big things are fantastic, but as we know, they take a lot longer.
Where are they pushing for the big things? So
Right now-
with Green Earth down and Earth Keepers, like all our organic waste goes out, in a
Correct.
hole somewhere.
Correct.
Are there plans coming up for that? Any sort of?
Right now, we're looking at potential sites for either for composting. I mean, we're looking at the old landfill. Is there anything possible that we can do out there that's, doesn't interfere with the waste and, everything else going on? So we've only had 3 meetings. It's very basic. Next Monday, we're having a meeting with Porter County's, I don't know if it's the Commission on Sustainability, or no, their solid waste district, because they have a couple of pilots going with compost, but it's neighborhood composting, and so we're looking at all those options. We're looking at a decentralized model, because based on state standards, you can have composting of less than 300 square feet, and then it doesn't have to be, they don't have to come and check it or anything like that, so could we have decentralized in each neighborhood, things like that? But then we're looking at, can we have a private-public partnership between Cook, Catalan, IU, the county, and the city, where, somebody donates the land, somebody else donates, pays for the workers, somebody else does this, right? So all those options are on the table, but as most task forces, it's slow going. So I'm just saying, hey, the farm's already doing some pilot programs. We're gonna be doing it regardless of whether you guys do anything, but hey, if you wanna throw some money in, we can double, triple, quadruple the amount of people that we can train to do this stuff, so, yeah.
Is there any, the not doing leaf pickup last fall? I expected there to be a bunch of clogged storm drains and flooding on the streets and stuff. I didn't see that, but I wasn't paying attention. Do you know any word from the city of how well that went?
I don't know, Galen?
I can get a better update on that tomorrow. I have a meeting tomorrow where I might be able to ask somebody about that. I mean, I know that they were doing a ton of education regarding how to manage that, considering they weren't gonna be continuing leaking. So, I mean, between that and then just whatever the city's undertaking to prevent that from happening, knowing that that was gonna be an issue with stopping leaving.
And they were
Michael Large in Public Works, and then Dave that was the Director of Innovation, worked really closely on managing, like that was the core focus for like all of last year, is how to manage the fact that they were ending the leafing program. So obviously that was successful.
But they were still picking up bag leaves that were put into bags,
Mhm.
right? And I definitely saw.
Not the vacuum trucks.
I definitely saw in different neighborhoods, people hiring private companies to suck
Yeah.
up their leaves
Yeah.
as well, but I also saw plenty of folks mowing them in.
Well, if there wasn't major catastrophic flooding as a result, that's something right there.
Right.
For your pilot programs, are you not applying for any of the B-Coast funding? Or you
We-
are?
We applied for BCOS funding for a pilot for recycling, all recyclables that aren't basically taken by the city. And so we've been doing surveys within the neighborhood, so we're doing, and essentially we're trying to expose the fact that there are recycling programs like all of Kroger's organic products. Anything that those come in, you can recycle that back with Kroger. So we want to show all the free programs there are, and then we got a $1,000 grant from BCause, and we're going to be recycling specific things within the neighborhood, and then using that to see, does the city want to fund that, or are there other grants that we can get to expand it to other neighborhoods? But that's not organic waste. That would be like,
Right.
what would it be? The milk cartons that
Right.
are, wax.
What's
LPPs.
the Kroger program?
The
Is it
Kroger has a
with-
program where
is
I
it
think
with-
it's anything with not their private selection, but their, whatever their organic.
Simple Truth.
Simple Truth, yeah.
Yeah.
Any Simple Truth product, they will take the packaging and recycle it.
Gotcha.
So there's a whole database of that, but it's a bit convoluted
Wow.
with the way that I'm blanking on the company's name, the nonprofit that manages all that. So we're just trying to make it easier and obvious, and then hoping that the city will help promote all these free programs to make residents more aware that there are all these programs that you can, like you can take your eye lens cases to various optometrists in town, and they have boxes to then send them off to be recycled instead of throwing in the trash. So there are tons of programs, there's just not the visibility into them.
So, I mean, with that, if there's opportunities for us to promote it either on the city website
Yep.
or, I mean, I don't know if Sean's given any updates on the climate action dashboard that we're working on launching. That's really, really close. We're just kind of tweaking. Yeah, we're like right there at the end. We were expecting hopefully to launch this week, and then we have some more things that we want to work through before we do. But, that's going to be promoting, of course, all of the city's programs, but we have kind of two different ways to interact with it. One is, this is what the city's doing to achieve the climate action plan, and then you can toggle elsewhere and say, what can you do? And it's also, similar actions where we are trying to provide as much information about the various resources that you can take advantage of
Right.
for various different actions. So when it comes to like recycling, we have all the resources on recycling, or energy managers, or how to access renewable energy, or organic, like composting, shopping local, like whatever else, like all the actions that you can take as a resident. So there's a huge opportunity there for us to promote whatever resources.
Fantastic.
Obviously, we don't have the time or capacity to sit and sift through every single possible resource. So whatever you do have,
Right.
Feel free to share, and that's on any topic that you guys are focused on. Like, it'll be easier once you have eyes on the dashboard to say, hey, I noticed that there's a gap here, because we've tried to cover as much ground as possible, but
Okay, so like
yeah,
a
whatever.
program like Compost Captains, which we're developing, and we're gonna be doing training for with our own nonprofit, that's something that we could include on that dashboard for visibility and,
yeah.
more eyes potentially seeing it and participating.
Yeah, if it's like an official program or something that you have like funding and is like actually being implemented, or like you're talking about for the recycling thing, you said something about doing surveys, like we can promote stuff like that if you're needing, more engagement.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Great. That concludes reports from commissioners. We'll move on to discussions, not resolutions. John, do you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, we have 15 minutes left. I could take that all up talking forest ecology because it's what I teach, but I don't know that it's that.
Do you want to hold it for next time?
Yeah, we'll do it.
So you can get more time. Actually,
I mean, the crux of it is this expansion basically moving a lot of the Hoosier National Forest into a wilderness area. instead of a federal forest.
Mhm.
That there's not new land being protected. The implication is that like no motorized vehicles, no bikes, no chainsaws, limited herbicide. Basically, you can't do very much once it becomes a wilderness area, and that is fine in Yosemite, maybe, sort of. To me, it's a huge problem in Indiana because we have a lot of things we need to manage.
But what happens when something that goes from federally protected land to wilderness land? How does other wilderness land get possessed by other entities if it's not federally protected?
I mean, they're both, it's like different types of federal.
So it's still federally protected.
Yeah, it's still federal, but it's
Different
it's
design.
protected under the Wilderness Act, which is like no chainsaws and no vehicles and
No timber or no lumber or anything like that at all?
very, very little.
Oh.
And I don't think it's a good idea in Indiana forest because we have very different kind of forests, very different history. Most of the forests are, I could go through, I have pictures of Brown County 100 years ago and whatnot, but it doesn't, as an ecologist, it doesn't seem like a good idea and I don't see what it's trying to do. So the idea of expansion and protection, you're like, oh, that sounds great, but you look at it, you're like, that just means we can't do anything there. Like, you can't go after invasive species, you can't manage the disturbance succession pattern, you're gonna get a bunch of maple and beech. And so like a lot of the mountain bikers are against it because they couldn't then go in because there's no bikes aren't allowed. A lot of the hunting groups are against it because you can't manage habitat. And so it's like Mike Braun and Indiana Forest Alliance, and I don't get it. Like, it seems like some weird political move.
Yeah, let's, if you would, please, we'll do the presentation next time.
Sure.
We'll block off
It's more
15
ecology,
minutes.
it's more just like the history of
Oh,
Indiana
that's,
Forest, but yeah.
we want to know
Yeah.
what portion, what, you know.
Yeah,
I want to
sure,
know more
no
about
problem.
what that means, but
Yep,
we can block off maybe an earlier part of the agenda
sure.
for a formal presentation.
Yeah, and I'd rather talk about the other stuff with more members, but
Yeah.
I think we can, finish it off with the Climate Action Plan versus the UDO, because we were having a robust discussion when Ellie Spear came up here. I didn't realize that the Climate Action Plan literally says, let's have the UDO move barriers out of the way so that we can have urban ag, so we can have all of these things. And so it seems like, and I think they had that by 2023, so we're actually already behind the ball with the Climate Action Plan.
Is
when
it
comes
just a
to
different
the
mechanism to
parameters.
change a UDO in the zoning stuff? Is it just that like the two hands aren't talking or whatever?
Well, the UDO takes precedence, and so anything that you bring to the UDO, to the zoning, the BZA, they have to, even if they like the idea,
Of course,
they have to
of
go
course,
by
yeah,
the rules.
They gotta go by the rules.
And so there's been nothing done with
So,
zoning.
but linking the
even with
climate action plan and the rules,
Mhm.
that just hasn't really happened to the extent
Correct.
that it could, okay.
Correct.
And I
Nobody's
did-
brought it up to this point,
Yeah.
is my understanding.
Did she
And
say,
so,
did she
we're,
say that the climate action plan says something about the
Yep.
UDO, or that
No,
the
no.
urban garden implementation plan?
The climate action.
the Climate
plan.
Action Plan.
But it said that it would amend the UDO to remove barriers to urban farming.
Yep.
And I think Ellie's case is a little different because she's a farm. Her property is a farm. And so in that case, UDO is trying to govern the use and the way people access it. So I just think when you get into the UDO, it's very like hair splitting over the language. So it would be interesting to think about other use cases, like
Right.
where people are trying to engage in agriculture and they're being limited by it, and how do we remove
Yeah,
those
like it
barriers?
used to be that you couldn't grow food in your front yard. That's no longer the case,
Yeah.
right? But once again, we want to make it easy so that anybody that wants to grow, whatever they want to grow, so on and so forth, that it makes it easy for that to happen.
The UDO has a baked-in update process, just FYI, it happens annually, and it just happened yesterday. So there will be a natural kind of time to go through, if you want to participate in that cycle. If you identify things, and you want to make recommendations to the Plan Commission, that might be the time frame to think about, and just since you're all volunteers, maybe that's reasonable, I don't know.
What exactly was it? Because it wasn't the fact that Ellie had an urban farm, it's that she was trying to get people to come in.
So she's trying to train students not just the outside portion, but the inside portion, so processing food, cooking
So-
food. And that's
okay.
the part that isn't allowed, so you're, once again, from seed to
You
table.
need to be like
So
a
we can get from
catering
seed to
company or
pulling out of the ground.
Right.
But the minute you step inside the building, that's where the city's not, that's where the city's saying no.
Well, I
And so
think-
how can you have an urban ag educational center if you can't take you all the way through the process?
Do they just expect that to be zoned something different? She's trying to do two different things in one place
If
that
you
they treat
look
separately?
at it from the zone, like shift from the zoning perspective and imagine that you're trying to put everything in boxes, right? And the way that they're managing the built environment is that they're sort of securing property. So they're not looking at what the Spear property is doing just in that neighborhood, or just as a self-contained piece of property. They're looking at it in the context of the neighborhood and the way that the neighborhood is used. So and this is my assumption, I'm spitballing, but this is the way I think it probably is. They're probably concerned that in a residential area, it would not be appropriate to introduce something akin to a commercial activity, even though, of course, the community good of that commercial activity is totally transparent and even stated by the city that it supports
want
it.
that, yeah.
So I can see how it gets a little hairy, but I'm curious to see if there's ways to work around it, or to work through it.
That also mitigates liability for people that, should there be salmonella or something goes wrong with the food, that once they take it out, then they're no longer responsible for that part of the process, and then maybe there's something that you could take it off-site to, I don't know,
Go back to school and do it there,
certification
you know.
thing, or where they verify it, and then
Yeah,
multiply it.
They've already used
Sort
the
that in.
new kitchen at the new library with the Girl Scouts and things like that, but it's to really.
Having everybody at one site. Nice,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I want to clarify, for anybody that goes looking for it, it's in the Sustainability Action Plan, the 2018 one, that says, which is still, we still provide updates on the Sustainability Action Plan and the Climate Action Plan, but I think the Sustainability Action Plan, I don't know when that's anticipated, and maybe 2023, but it says the city is updating its Unified Development Ordinance and incorporating zoning provisions that reduce barriers to urban farming and farm stands. So it says that in the food and ag section of the 2018 Sustainability Action Plan. There's nothing in the Climate Action Plan about updating the UDO or zoning with regards to food and ag.
Well, yeah, we have a lot for next time, but, so, one thing, Justin and I were talking about having co-chair and co-chair instead of doing chair and vice chair. If either of you want to go up for it, that's what he and I were talking about, or vice chair. We just want to be able to do a different strategy approach coming up. We don't have people, I mean, if I'm gonna go for it, he's gonna go for it, but I also want other people to have that opportunity to go for it if they want it. So I think it's good we're holding off on voting, but because we,
Choice.
yeah, exactly. So because we have this manpower problem,
Human power problem.
there you go. I think we should really come up, put a bit of focus on our strategy for solidifying this commission. Yeah, we have the approach for facilitating new members joining. We already have everything else in place, but now we're losing the people, so we have to fix that first.
Do we want to have like a dedicated student position?
We talked about
the
that,
way
right?
we've had it, like the sustainability director is automatic, or just some sort of I don't know.
You know, I think that's
make
a
it a
good
little more
idea,
formal
but
for
at the same
students.
time, I
That's
don't want to put
tying our hands when we maybe don't need to.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it's a good idea, because then if we have a representative at IU that, in the sustainability office, then we have a student that.
My thought
participate in
is that
student
that would
groups.
potentially make it more attractive. They're like, ooh, I'm the IU representative, versus like, oh, I happen to join this thing, you know.
Well,
And potentially you get some kind of legacy effect of, finding, I don't know.
The people that I talk to that want to join, they want to join because they're enthusiastic to do something.
Yeah.
Like, they want to help
Yep.
And they want to participate in the process and learn it as they go. So
Well, and-
that's what we need, is the enthusiasm, people that are going to show up, not just for 90 minutes
We
a
had
month.
some
But
students.
Dennis is a student.
But she's a
she's a-
PhD student too, that's
She's still a
loaded with work.
Right, but she's still a student, I guess is my point. So are we
Alex
talking,
is a
are we
student.
talking
Alex.
undergrads, or are we
I don't
talking
know.
grad students, or are we talking PhDs?
I'm specifically looking for people in sustainability or project management,
Okay,
because
doesn't matter.
the project management people will already have the skills to make a lot of this happen. The sustainability people will already have the drive to jump in.
I
Like
think,
I
it's a
said,
good idea. I
there's
don't
like
think a 2-year term, a 6-month
50
or a
people.
1-year term makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's why in my projection, or my proposal for the Propel program, I was looking specifically for sophomores or juniors, so that they could do the term, and then, keep them interested by getting them more involved in the city. And then we help IU with retention, or placement, the city with retainment. There's a lot of benefits, but we need more people to make this happen. So that should be our number one thing. If you guys have any friends or colleagues,
Start with,
Yeah.
start with word of mouth.
yeah, let's see if we can get those 3 spots filled while we vacate the 2 that are kind of vacated already.
yeah, and I'll note that in your case, Matt, that the code says that, if somebody's appointment expires and, the appointing authority hasn't replaced their seat yet, then that person can continue in that role until there's a replacement. So for the purposes of quorum today, at least you can count. So,
I exist.
so yeah, but by my count officially, we have 4 out of 12
Lovely.
today.
All right. That's been that way since last July. All right. We're just about out of time. I think that covers new business. We have no resolutions for first or second reading. So at this point, I will adjourn this meeting. The next meeting will be April 8th. April 9th. Thank you. 2024.
Happy March Madness, everybody.